Dawn stretched pale gold across Maple Creek, the kind of shy spring sunrise that left a misty hush on asphalt and porch railings. Sparrows hopped along telephone wires, testing halting melodies. Lawn sprinklers flicked on, catching the first light like spun glass. It was the hour when parents sipped coffee beside half-packed lunchboxes and children shouldered knobby backpacks still smelling faintly of new plastic. On Hickory Lane, the morning calm held, broken only by the squeak of a screen door and the rhythmic slap of a large dog's paws against the pavement. His name was Atlas, an amber-eyed blue-nosed pitbull with a coat the color of storm-washed pewter. Even at a glance you saw the coiled athleticism, the broad chest, the narrow waist, the low panther glide that came from miles of early walks with his owner. Olivia Carson. Olivia was a widowed graphic designer who had quietly moved back to her hometown after a decade in Chicago. She was grateful for any routine that anchored her 7-year-old twins before school days exploded into math drills and finger paint. Atlas had become that anchor, every dawn. A circuit around Hickory Lane. Paws tapping in cadence with Olivia's old running shoes. The world still deciding what kind of day it wanted to be. This particular Wednesday, however, the neighborhood had already decided. It would be the day of the runaway bus. The day a dog rewrote the script everyone thought they knew about pit bulls and heroism and tiny choices that snowball into legend. Olivia tightened her grip on Atlas's leash when she reached the end of her driveway. The school bus sat 20 yards downhill at the intersection, gleaming yellow in the low sun. Engine ticking from a recent run. Its driver, Vince Rodriguez, had stepped out and was chatting with Mrs. Langley, the crossing guard who'd been the neighborhood's unofficial grandmother since the 90s. Vince had forgotten to set the parking brake. Later, he would swear he'd tugged it, would replay the memory in slow motion, searching for the click that never came. From where Olivia stood, the bus looked inert, a cheerful monument to morning hustle. Then gravity voiced its veto. The front wheels rolled, almost lazily, the big vehicle nudging forward as though awakening from a nap. By the time Vince turned, momentum had bitten. 60,000 pounds of steel and seats and fresh crayon drawings began to gather speed down Hickory's sloping crown. Olivia's breath snagged. She shouted Vince's name, but her voice felt paper thin against the escalating rumble. Vince lunged for the door handle, but the bus had drifted just out of reach. Mrs. Langley grabbed her radio, barked a fractured warning into static. In that expanding heartbeat, Atlas's body stiffened, his ears pricked, the leash went taut. Olivia sensed the question in him, permission, before she even registered the slack-jawed horror blooming in her chest. She unclipped the leash with hands that didn't feel like hers. Atlas shot forward, a gray streak against the sun-dappled blacktop. Security footage later parsed frame by frame would show a blur of muscle and determination sprinting past Vince's outstretched fingertips, closing the 6-foot gap to the bus's folding door. The lower step still hovered a foot above the road. Dancing from the grade, Atlas launched, forepaws slamming the threshold, hind legs thrusting with enough power to leave claw scratches in the fiberglass. He vanished inside. There was no human driver to kneel on the service brake. There was only the dog. Light spilled through the windshield, catching dust motes swirling around empty seats. The bus kept rolling. Atlas skidded on vinyl, claws scraping for purchase, tail lashing for balance. He'd never been inside a bus. The smell of rubber floor mats and diesel. The strange echo of an engine with no hands on the wheel, none of it mattered. Ahead, level with his chest, jutted the squared-off pedal that Vince's boot should have pinned. Atlas lunged atop it. His 70-pound frame came down hard, chest over paws, and his full weight compressed the pneumatic chamber beneath the pedal. The bus jerked, speed bleeding fast. Tires squealed their protest. A hubcap spit sparks against the curb. From the street, Vince recovered, running alongside, slapping sheet metal in a desperate bid to stay parallel. Mrs. Langley's fluorescent vest flapped as she hustled beside him. The bus was still in slow motion. But slow motion beats freefall. Slow motion gives humans room to course correct. Atlas stayed planted, rump hitching up, front half pressed like a living brick. The front bumper kissed the yield sign at an angle, glass trembled but held. The bus stopped. Silence crashed louder than the skidding tires. Vince reached the doorway, vaulted up, found Atlas panting atop the brake. The dog's amber eyes were wide but steady, fixed on the wheel well as though expecting it to spring back into menace. Vince choked on half a sob, half a laugh. His knees gave out, he knelt, arms around the muscular neck, cheek pressed to warm fur that smelled of morning dew and suburban grass. Outside, Olivia sprinted down, heart ricocheting. Mrs. Langley leaned against a mailbox, tears fogging her bifocals. Garage doors up and down the block yawned wide as neighbors stepped into the street clutching phones. Ceramic mugs. Disbelief. A pair of middle schoolers stared from the sidewalk, backpacks forgotten on the concrete. One whispered. Later microphones would catch it. "Dude, that Pitbull just saved the bus." The phrase would metastasize across social media inside an hour. Local news vans arrived before noon, antennas telescoping skyward like silver saplings. Reporters practiced stand-ups beside the halted bus, still roofed in the amber halo of its hazard lights. Olivia and Vince stood together on Carson's lawn while Atlas lounged at their feet gnawing a chew toy someone had slipped him from a gift bag of hastily purchased treats. Every few minutes a new microphone thrust forward. "Tell us, ma'am, what compelled your dog to leap onto a moving vehicle?" Olivia's answer never changed. She didn't talk about the obedience classes or how she'd adopted Atlas from a city shelter the year after her husband's accident. She didn't mention the flyers she'd seen taped to vet clinic walls warning about dangerous breeds. She simply said Atlas did what family does, he acted. Then she let tears rim her words because no combination of gratitude and adrenaline lets itself stay tidy for the evening news. Vince provided the comic relief production crew's love. He replayed his mistake and his panic with self-deprecating candor, a ball cap shading embarrassed eyes. Cameras loved him, but they adored Atlas, loved the stoic hero dog sitting on hindquarters, head cocked, as though puzzling over the fuss. Footage from the bus's interior camera emerged within hours. In shaky 720p you could watch that blur of pewter muscle vaulting into frame, bracing atop the pedal. The moment Atlas's chest met the brake plate on loop, jaws parted, lips drawn back in what some swore looked like determination. NBC aired it at 7. CNN clipped it for the Midnight World Wrap. Within 2 days, TikTok edits added dubstep bass drops and humorous subtitles. One post racked up 8 million views. "When you main tank IRL." The comment sections roiled with heart emojis and jokes about Pitbull PR firms. But the video that carved a welt in the national psyche was shot on a phone by 4th grader Jasmine Healy, who had been riding her bike 30 yards behind Olivia when she captured Atlas's whole sprint in jittery vertical clarity. Her shriek of, "Go doggy go," underscored the footage, the innocence behind it amplifying the peril. Jasmine's parents sold distribution rights for exactly $1 on the condition the clip never be used for anti-Pitbull propaganda. Instead, it was spliced into a Good Morning America cold open while anchor Robin Chen grinned. Not all heroes wear capes, some of them wear collars. 3 evenings later, Hickory Elementary hosted an assembly in its sun-washed gymnasium. Someone unfurled a banner painted hastily in temperous swirls by an art class that had foregone geometry to illustrate gratitude. Block letters read "Thank you Atlas," surrounded by crooked paw prints and cartoon buses. Atlas padded onto the polished floor between bleacher rows crammed with parents, teachers, and every child who normally would have been streaming home to video games and after-school snacks. Phones lifted like a forest of glowing leaves. The room hummed with record buttons and squeals. Principal Marquez offered Atlas a certificate inside a plastic sleeve. The dog sniffed it, uninterested, until Olivia slipped him a peanut butter stuffed biscuit she'd tucked in her jacket pocket. Then, to the crowd's delight, he sat, raised one paw, and placed it dead center on the certificate. 30 seconds of applause echoed off cinder block walls. Yet the most enduring image came later. Captured by freelance photojournalist David Go. Atlas lying amid a ring of kids who sprawled on the varnished floor, each reading him their crayon drawings. One depicted Atlas as a cape-wearing superhero, paws spread like Superman above a cartoon bus. Another showed the dog as a knight shielding the vehicle with a steel breastplate. In each, the bus's windows overflowed with smiling stick-figure children. Atlas's head swiveled, eyes following each presenter, tail thumping with patient rhythmic assurance. NGO's photograph ran in newspapers from Portland to Philadelphia beneath the headline "The Day Kindness Hit the Brakes." Producers of a national morning talk show soon phoned Olivia's small colonial house, coaxing her to fly Atlas to New York for an appearance. Olivia declined twice. The twins had standardized tests, she told them, and Atlas wasn't keen on airplanes. But she agreed to a remote segment if Vince and Mrs. Langley could join. When the red light went live, viewers met a modest trio glowing with small-town humility. Vince in a borrowed blazer, Mrs. Langley holding her crossing guard stop paddle like a holy relic, and Olivia with Atlas at her feet, each answering the host's questions with an earnestness no PR polish could duplicate. Donations for Atlas's favorite rescue shelter spiked tenfold that afternoon. The American Humane Society announced it would award Atlas its Hero Dog Medal at a ceremony that summer. Photoshop wizards floated mock-up posters of Atlas, the movie, some casting Chris Evans as Vince and Viola Davis as Mrs. Langley. Netizens debated who should voice Atlas in inevitable Pixar adaptation. Amid the mimetic whirlwind, Olivia fielded harsher currents. Anonymous emails arrived claiming Atlas's heroics were dumb luck, that he'd simply panicked. A segment on a cable panel show trotted out a self-proclaimed canine behaviorist who insisted that because Pitbulls were bred for aggression, they lacked the impulse control to save anyone intentionally. The moment's success, he argued, was accidental. The program split into snide laughter. Olivia saw the clip once, slammed her laptop shut, and took Atlas for an even longer walk than usual, letting the dog sniff every mailbox until twilight pricked streetlights awake. When they returned, a handwritten envelope waited on the stoop. Inside lay a scribbled note from a boy named Kai. "I never liked dogs, but now I'm not scared anymore. Thank you, Atlas." The letter smelled of fruit snacks and graphite. Olivia kept it in the same drawer where she stored her late husband's watch. 2 weeks after the incident, Netflix's documentary unit dispatched producer Celine Walker to Maple Creek. She arrived with a 3-person crew and a bushel of non-disclosure forms. Their working title, Breaking Point. They filmed Olivia's pre-dawn walks, Vince's morning route, and interviews in Vince's cluttered living room, the walls crowded with family photos from Puerto Rico. They sat across from Mrs. Langley inside the crossing guard shack, its interior smaller than a phone booth, plastered with decades of thank you cards. Celine kept circling back to a single question. She posed it to Vince, to Olivia, to the twins, to busload parents. Why do you think Atlas ran toward danger? Answers varied: because dogs sense urgency, because pit bulls are loyal, because some animals see a gap in the universe and decide to fill it. Olivia answered last, voice steady. Maybe he ran because someone had to. In edit suites a continent away, Celine's team synced that line with the bus interior footage, Atlas lunging, weight slamming the brake, and slowed it to half-speed. Soft piano notes rose in the soundtrack. The screen faded to black. It was a hook made for festival circuits. Media attention eventually drifts, but Maple Creek found ways to keep Atlas's legacy evergreen. The PTA printed reflective stickers shaped like Atlas's paw, distributing them so kids could slap them on helmets and binders. Vince convinced the district transportation board to install dash cameras on every bus, 4 angles per vehicle. Data stored to redundant drives, paid for by a foundation that sprang up, unsurprisingly named the Atlas Assembly. Its charter: fund safety tech and sponsor therapy dog programs in urban schools. The crossing guard shack where Mrs. Langley still warmed her thermos at dawn acquired a small brass plaque, "On this corner." April 17, 2025. Bravery found 4 paws and a heartbeat. She polished it every Friday with the same gusto she once spent flagging down cars. The story grew a coda that only a dog's lifespan could furnish. 3 months after the rescue, Vince returned from his route to find Atlas's leash looped to his front gate. Olivia stood holding a binder full of renovation sketches. She'd started a side hustle designing inclusive playgrounds, and needed someone to test whether her latest idea, canine agility stations beside the swing set, would interest sponsors. Atlas galloped the prototype course, weaving through PVC arches, vaulting low hurdles. Vince took photos, sent them to potential donors with the caption, "Proof of concept by one certified hero." Donations arrived, modest at first, then in torrents as local media highlighted the scheme. Construction broke ground on a community park that autumn, recycled rubber turf, wheelchair-friendly ramps, a splash pad shimmering blue under cedar rafters, and a corner agility arena christened Atlas Field. Olivia painted a mural on its cinder block wall, Atlas mid-leap. Cape fluttering, chasing the sunrise. On opening day, families lined the perimeter rope. A brass quartet from the high school band coaxed a Sousa march across the breeze. The twins brought Kai, the once dog-phobic boy who'd written the fruit snack letter. Together they clipped the ceremonial ribbon. As it fell, Atlas burst forward, weaving through bright orange cones as though the entire park was his personal victory lap. Children squealed. Confetti cannons fired rainbow paper arcs that floated into perfect dawn light. David Go, the photojournalist, captured another shot. Atlas mid-stride, mouth open in what could only be called a grin. Confetti suspended around him like aurora snow. The image became a poster for an annual 5K charity run that now funds rescue dog training across the state. By the first anniversary, the Runaway bus had become more than an anecdote. It was modern folklore joked about by late-night hosts. Used in leadership seminars, cited by op-ed writers championing breed-neutral legislation. If you asked residents of Maple Creek what happened that morning, they'd each emphasize different shards. The moment wheels started turning. The metallic screech. Vince's sprint. The hush that fell after. But every retelling ended the same way. A Pitbull named Atlas stopped a bus. Reminded people what it looks like when courage outruns disaster and sits on it until the danger wheezes to a halt. July heat draped itself over Los Angeles like theater velvet. Rich and heavy, shimmering with palm frond silhouettes that trembled in exhaust haze. On the afternoon Atlas Carson arrived. LAX pulsed with the usual bustle. But a hush rippled outward when travelers recognized the slate-gray Pitbull trotting at Olivia's side. The dog had never flown before. And for days Olivia nursed a quiet dread of cargo holds and turbulence. The event planners solved the problem by chartering a pet-friendly jet staffed with 2 volunteer veterinary techs. Atlas disembarked unruffled, nails clicking across polished concourse tiles as though every air terminal should include fire hydrant sculptures and complimentary duck jerky. A stretched SUV bearing the American Humane insignia whisked Atlas, Olivia, Vince, Mrs. Langley, and a giddy film crew to the Millennium Regent downtown, where golden facades mirrored a cloudless sky. Bellhops in crimson jackets tried to maintain poise, but one surrendered to impulse and knelt to scratch Atlas behind the ears, murmuring, "Good boy," in a tremulous baritone. Cameras flashed. Atlas's tail swept the marble in leisurely arcs. The gala rehearsals occupied the hotel's cavernous Valencia ballroom, a chamber of 20-foot crystal chandeliers and carpeting patterned like spilled stardust. Event producer Lila Meyer greeted the Maple Creek contingent with espresso shots and a clipboard bristling with color-coded tabs. She had built careers for pop icons and senators. Yet she approached Atlas with the reverence of a curator unveiling a Rodin. Her first directive: choreograph tomorrow's walk across the main stage. Stagehands unfurled a velvet runner between rows of banquet tables. Under the glare of spotlights, Atlas was to escort Olivia halfway. Pause at a taped X accept the Hero Dog Medal from retired astronaut commander Elena Tarek, and pose for official portraits. Lila demonstrated the route with a dachshund plushie pinched between thumb and forefinger. Atlas, watching, tilted his head as though memorizing her footwork. The first practice run went flawlessly until a lighting rig hiccuped, showering sparks the size of parakeet feathers. Atlas flinched but held position. Vince did not, he bolted forward, sliding a palm beneath the dog's collar, shielding him with his body. For a breath, the ballroom fell silent save for the whine of cooling metal. Stagehands killed the rig's power. Atlas licked Vince's wrist once. Calm restored, Lila muttered a swift prayer to the union gods and summoned electricians. Olivia, heart-hammering, realized again how trauma lingers like low thunder long after danger passes. Upstairs, adjoining suites created a temporary headquarters. Olivia's twins, Lily and Evan, flung themselves onto a cartoonishly wide sectional. marveling at remote-controlled curtains and a minibar stocked with gummy bears shaped like Oscar statuettes. They had finished 4th grade 2 weeks earlier. Still wore the paper mortarboards their teacher had insisted upon for promotion day. And now found themselves in a city that smelled of blooming jacaranda and waffle cones. Atlas padded between rooms, accepting belly rubs from everyone save the hair and makeup team, whose aerosol mists he distrusted. To soothe him, Mrs. Langley hummed Rodgers and Hammerstein melodies learned during her own elementary plays. She had never flown either, but she handled altitude better than she expected, crediting decades spent atop crossing guard platforms inhaling bus exhaust. That evening she telephoned her daughter to report surviving turbulence no worse than a 12-year-old with a skateboard. The Netflix crew, now nearly 8 months into production, occupied a corner suite turned edit bay. Producer Celine Walker sat cross-legged on the carpet, headphones clamped, sifting through drives labeled Hickory AMB Cam and Park Grand Opening B-roll. Her documentary had doubled its budget since early drafts convinced executives they had a real-life Marvel origin story. Celine worried about narrative thrust. Real heroism lacked the tidy arcs professionals crave. The unpredictable nature of dogs defied the 3-act structure. Yet every time Atlas entered frame, her misgivings quieted, his presence carried its own dramaturgy. Outside, downtown traffic pulsed to the orchestral honk of ride shares and tour buses. Sunset painted the skyline a smoldered tangerine, and in reflective windows the hotel itself looked aflame. Olivia sat on a balcony, legs tucked beneath her, sketchpad balanced on knees. She captured shards of the city, fire escapes looping like brass ribbons. Neon signs exhaling cursive pink glows. A skateboarder carving lazy figure eights on the plaza 5 stories below. Atlas joined her, front paws suspended through baluster gaps, muzzle lifted to catch the faint salt tinge rolling inland from Santa Monica. They stayed until the last slice of daylight slipped behind the Wilshire Grand and helicopter rotors beat out distant lullabies. Night deepened. The suite buzzed with garment bags and ironing boards. A wardrobe consultant had selected a midnight blue gown for Olivia, tailored to echo a quiet confidence. Vince received a charcoal tuxedo whose crisp lapels made him resemble a telenovela lead. Mrs. Langley balked at evening wear until stylists produced a bespoke safety vest sash bedazzled with Swarovski crystals. She cackled. Agreed. Atlas's attire. A simple leather collar embossed with a silver A encircled by laurel leaves. Lila floated rumors that a luxury brand wanted to auction a canine tux for charity. But Olivia vetoed it. Atlas saved a bus by being himself. Not by cosplaying. The brand donated $10,000 anyway. The children rehearsed their roles as mini presenters. They were to recite a paragraph penned by teleprompter writers about the courage found in unexpected places. But Evan insisted on an ad-libbed closer. Atlas, you're the GOAT. Lily spent half an hour explaining GOAT as greatest of all time to a perplexed teleprompter tech who thought farm animal metaphors inappropriate for formal galas. In the end, the line stayed, italicized for emphasis. Near midnight, Olivia ushered the twins to their room. She thought exhaustion would claim them quickly. But city noise funneled through cracked windows. So she relented, agreeing to one story. Evan chose the tale of the runaway bus again, even though he had lived it from a backyard trampoline vantage point. Olivia embellished details, how the bus smelled faintly of sharpened pencils. How Atlas's paws glowed like meteorites as he leapt until eyelids sagged. She pressed a kiss to each brow, then settled into her own bed, nerves coiling. At 3 a.m., an earthquake tremor rattled hangers in the closet. It was mild, a magnitude barely broadcast beyond local radio. To Olivia, half asleep, it felt like the universe shaking off a dream. Atlas lifted his head, blinked at the shifting lampshade, then resettled, snout across Olivia's ankles, the canine equivalent of telling the planet to hush. Morning crashed in on a tide of wake-up calls and garment steam. Breakfast service wheeled in silver domes hiding blueberry pancakes shaped like dog bones, an enterprising chef's tribute. Mrs. Langley toasted bagels over a candle to save time. Vince paced. Public speaking had never frightened him, but black tie crowds suggested judgy stares. Atlas ate kibble, then stared mournfully at Olivia's pancakes until Lily slipped him a syrup-dipped corner. Downstairs, red carpet barricades funneled celebrities through a gauntlet of reporters. Flashbulbs ricocheted, shrill greetings fluttered above camera clicks. The cast of a medical drama posed with a rescue husky wearing orthopedic booties. A country singer hoisted a one-eyed terrier and crooned a bar of his latest single. Then Atlas padded from the lobby. And every lens reoriented like sunflowers to a new sun. Interviewers lobbed rapid-fire questions. Olivia spoke of community, of second chances for shelter dogs. Vince cracked a grin, confessed his bus route now felt safer with kids shouting, "Brake check," whenever they boarded. Mrs. Langley flashed her crystal safety sash. Explained that crossing guards are first responders without sirens. Each quip drew applause from bleachers filled with shelter volunteers. Inside the ballroom, round tables gleamed beneath star-shaped gilt centerpieces. A backdrop depicting constellations of paw prints towered behind the stage. Commander Tarek waited in her Navy dress uniform, medals jangling softly. She had orbited Earth 227 times. But she admitted to butterflies over pinning a ribbon on a dog. The program unfolded. Video montages of therapy dogs helping veterans. A live auction for a surf lesson with celebrity bulldogs. A 16-piece orchestra performing jazz renditions of classic cartoon themes. Finally, spotlights cross-hatched over the stage wings. Olivia and Atlas stepped into brightness. Atlas moved with unhurried precision, nose sampling currents of perfume and filet mignon. Midway down the runner he paused, not at the tape decks but beside a wheelchair-bound boy whose eyes shimmered like road puddles in summer heat. The boy's trembling hands reached. Atlas lowered his head for a pat. Cameras captured the stillness, the boy's fingers burrowing into short velvety fur. The rise of a smile that seemed to prune years of hospital corridors off his face. Lila mouthed a silent thank you to the canine choreography gods. Olivia's pulse pounded. She feared scheduled derailment. But Commander Tarek, herself acquainted with anomalies, strode forward, medal aloft, and fastened it while Atlas remained bowed beneath the boy's touch. The ribbon settled against the dog's chest, deep crimson against slate. A roar of applause thundered so fiercely that chandeliers trembled like swarms of captive fireflies. Evan seized the podium. Microphones squealed, died, revived. He spoke without teleprompter prompts. When someone you love needs help, you move. Atlas moved, and because he moved, now we all get to move forward believing in bigger things. Lily closed with the promised flourish. Atlas, you're the GOAT. Laughter braided with cheers. The orchestra spilled into an exuberant brass fanfare. Atlas finally looked up, tongue lolling in what every onlooker swore was a grin. After party clusters formed around dessert stations shaped like doghouses piping chocolate fountains from their roofs. Hollywood producers pitched animated spin-offs. A best-selling memorist begged Olivia for collaboration rights. She demurred. Mindful of sensationalism, Commander Tarek invited Vince to tour Mission Control. He promised a classroom FaceTime session instead. Wanting Maple Creek students to see EarthView monitors firsthand, Mrs. Langley held court near a photo booth, posing with a boas and paddles theme. Atlas napped beneath the table where Lily stacked slices of layer cake into impromptu forts. Everything seemed incandescent, a crescendo of goodwill. No one saw the harbinger written in the faint limp that haunted Atlas's back leg when he rose too quickly. Olivia chalked it to carpet traction. The dog had sprinted stairs all week. Yet that night, while she unfastened the hero medal in the suite, she felt a tiny knot high on his thigh, hard as a button beneath the fur. Atlas flinched but made no protest. Olivia's throat tightened. The next morning, they visited a Beverly Hills veterinary clinic recommended by the gala's pet liaison. X-rays revealed a small mass adjacent to the femur. Dr. Kim, eyes soft behind apple green frames, delivered her words like nesting dolls. Likely benign, surgical removal straightforward, caution best practice. Olivia nodded, mind sprinting past every syllable to worst-case finish lines. She recalled pamphlets on breed-specific illnesses. Social media chatter linking Pitbull genetics to certain sarcomas, though she had never lingered on them long. Surgery scheduled for 2 days hence. The hotel extended their stay gratis. Netflix offered to cover medical bills. Olivia accepted the first, declined the second. Pride braided with maternal instinct. Vince canceled his return flight. Marched to Atlas's suite each dawn to coax the dog into light physio walks along the corridor. Lily researched canine oncology on a tablet, constructing a PowerPoint no one requested. Evan built Lego facsimiles of hospital machines, placing a minifigure dog on a gurney while whispering heroic pep talks. Dr. Kim's clinic specialized in minimally invasive procedures using laparoscopic routers that looked like sci-fi wands. The waiting room on surgery day smelled of lavender oil diffusers. Olivia stroked Atlas's head until a nurse gently unclipped the leash. Double doors swung shut. Olivia's hand hovered midair. Memory of fur warmth dissipating like vapor. Hours stretched like over-chewed gum. Mrs. Langley knit a scarf in gala ribbon colors. Vince paced, reciting brake maintenance checklists under his breath as though prayer. Celine filmed none of it. Camera batteries died in solidarity. She joked, but truthfully she sensed some silences deserved to remain unrecorded. At last Dr. Kim emerged, mask dangling at her throat, smile tilting. "Atlas is a champ," she said. "Tumor encapsulated, excised clean. Preliminary histology suggests low-grade fibroma. No metastasis. Relief cracked spines." Chairs squealed as people stood. When Olivia entered recovery, she found Atlas groggy yet responsive. Tail thudding with measured tempo like a drummer testing sticks. She rested her forehead against his, felt his breath warm her cheek, whispered gratitude to Marrow and Starlight. Recovery melded into a sun-splashed week of slow walks under jacaranda snow. Hotel staff doting with marrow bone broth. Fans mailed plush school buses stitched with capes. Atlas's scar healed into a pale S-shaped thread, a signature more than a wound. He regained his stride, if a bit narrower hip than before. Dr. Kim cleared him for flight back to Maple Creek. Homecoming unfolded as a parade. The bus depot strung pennants, children waved paper paw flags. Vince honked an improvised Morse code anthem. Atlas bounded down the ramp, sniffing familiar soil. Someone burst a confetti cannon prematurely, startling sparrows into a choreographed exodus. Olivia laughed, felt something unclasp inside her ribcage. The realization that their story could bend without breaking. Media interest flickered anew, tweaking headlines toward survival arcs. Talk shows requested updates. Olivia granted one interview to remind audiences that heroism might leap from any species, neighborhood, or moment, but true stewardship meant safeguarding that hero long after flashbulbs dimmed. She announced the Atlas Assembly Fund's next initiative, subsidizing diagnostic clinics for shelter animals. Catching illnesses early for pets whose adoption odds already teetered. Celine returned to California to finish editing Breaking Point, layering post-operative footage with scenes of Atlas mastering agility ramps at the new park. She closed on a sunrise shot, Atlas atop a hill overlooking Maple Creek. Metal catching dawn, wind riffing his ears. Overlaid audio featured Vince telling his Roots kindergarten class, "Everybody has a brake pedal inside. When something rolls the wrong way, use it." End credits rolled against children's crayon drawings, their signatures looping in rainbow strokes. The film premiered at Sundance the following January, earning a standing ovation. Critics praised its refusal to paint perfection. A brave dog, yes, but also a driver's mistake. A community's reckoning. A tumor scare reminding audiences heroism doesn't grant immunity from life's randomness. Netflix released it globally on a spring Friday. By Monday, search terms Pitbull adoption spiked 21%. Shelters in 4 states reported volunteer inquiries tripled. Olivia watched the premiere stream in her living room, Atlas's head in her lap. The twins curled on either side. Credits rolled, and for a breath no one spoke. Then Lily murmured, "Mom, does a story ever end if people keep talking about it?" Olivia kissed her temple, said, "Stories don't end, they grow branches." Some branches stretched far. Legislation drafted to standardize school bus braking systems nationwide. Crosswalk grants named after Mrs. Langley. A children's book co-authored by Commander Tarek and Evan titled The Day a Dog Hit the Brakes. Illustrated by Lily in watercolors that dripped constellations across every page. Each sale funneled profits to the Assembly Fund. On Atlas's next birthday, Maple Creek Park hosted a twilight picnic. Lanterns bobbed on fishing lines strung between oak limbs. A projector beamed breaking point onto a bedsheet hung from soccer goalposts. Families reclined on blankets, applauding twice. Once when Atlas leapt into the bus and again when he woke from surgery. Olivia scanned the crowd. Faces flickered silver blue in screen light. Laughter curled upward. Even the breeze felt rehearsed to perfect tempo. Atlas, now fully healed, trotted from blanket to blanket, collecting crusts and caresses. Near the projector he found Kai, the formerly fearful boy, reading to a younger child from the picture book. Atlas settled at their feet, chin upon paws, eyes half closed, content to listen to the story he had authored with actions alone. Night deepened. Fireflies replaced digital pixels. Families folded chairs. Children plucked lanterns as souvenirs. Olivia lingered beside the projector's dying glow, hand resting on Atlas's neck. She recalled the moment when time had slowed, wheels turning, leash unclipped, the split second she trusted instinct over fear. That trust had ricocheted outward, altering laws, saving animals, mending hearts she would never meet. All because a dog moved. She knelt, faced Atlas at eye level. Ready to go home, hero? His tail swept grass, rhythm steady as ever. Together they walked toward the park gate, moonlight spilling silver coins ahead of them. The path open, stories unspooling like ribbon behind and before them. Unnumbered, unending. Cold starlight shimmered across Maple Creek 4 years after the day Atlas braced his chest against a bus pedal and upended a nation's expectations about courage. The neighborhood had changed in subtle crescendos. Front porches wore fresh coats of turquoise and burnt umber paint. New saplings lined Hickory Lane where old elms once punched sidewalks into zigzags. And the Carson twins now towered a full head above their mother. Yet every sunrise still carried the percussive tap of Atlas's paws leading Olivia down streets that smelled of wet cedar and bakery dough. The gray around his muzzle had spread, otherwise. He was the same pewter sentinel whose gaze could still pin a drifting leaf in midair. It was March, the month when spring balanced on a knife edge between frost and bloom. At 6 o'clock on a gauzy morning, Olivia and Atlas passed the refurbished crossing guard shack. Mrs. Langley had retired, her crystal safety sash framed inside Maple Creek's new city hall, but the plaque gleamed on. Brass letters catching dawn. Bravery found 4 paws and a heartbeat. Olivia touched the cool metal. Ritual now. Whispered thanks. Atlas sat briefly, ears canted, as if saluting an old comrade. Then they moved on, following silhouettes of morning joggers who waved in wordless camaraderie. Life since the gala had unfolded like a book that refused final chapters. The Atlas Assembly Fund expanded into a national network of vet tech scholarships and mobile diagnostic vans. Vince Rodriguez, still steering the district's yellow fleet, hosted monthly safety workshops linking brake maintenance to broader lessons about accountability. The twins, ravenous readers, had adapted their picture book into a middle-grade graphic novel. It topped indie charts for 14 weeks. But for all the external shimmer, what mattered to Olivia was the quiet consistency of a dog who refused to let fame alter his instincts. At home he still nudged door hinges when storms brewed. Still nosed the twins' bedroom doors open at dawn on test days. Still nudged the TV remote into Olivia's hand when the evening news rattled too loud. The bus incident had never inflated his ego. Heroism, Atlas proved, was less an act than a manner of existing. That constancy would be tested again the night the levee cracked. Heavy rains pounded Maple Creek for 5 days straight, drumming roofs with tropical insistence long after meteorologists predicted lighter showers. The river that curved around the town, usually a gentle brown ribbon, surged into a churning snake the color of forging steel. City officials dispatched sandbag crews, but water found every weakness. At 2 a.m. on a Saturday, a 30-foot segment of the southern levee surrendered with a thunderclap that rattled picture frames as far as Hickory Lane. Sirens ignited, streetlights flickered, then died in clusters. Emergency alerts pinged phones in staccato waves. Olivia sat bolt upright as the first shriek split the neighborhood, metal scraping asphalt. She crossed to the window. Headlights slanted crooked beams through swirling rain. A produce truck had jackknifed outside. Steering seized when water sheeted across the crown of the road. In its wake, Uprooted garbage cans swirled like anxious crabs. Olivia pivoted toward the twins' doorway. But before she moved, Atlas was already there, shoulder against wood, claws scratching a percussive warning. He'd sensed the rising pitch in the air hours earlier, pacing restless loops through halls while thunder marched westward. Power cut. The house sighed into darkness, punctuated by electronic beeps of defeated appliances. Olivia flicked her phone flashlight. Wind keened. A block away a transformer erupted, white starburst. Then black. In that strobe instant Olivia saw the street below tilting with water ankle-deep in climbing. She decided in one breath. They would head for the middle school gymnasium. Pre-designated flood shelter. Lily and Evan dressed fast, stuffing textbooks and drawings into waterproof satchels that half floated already. Olivia slung an emergency bag across her back, flashlight, first aid kit, packets of kibble, medical records, and clipped Atlas's collar. Outside, water lapped the porch's lowest step. Olivia's running shoes vanished to the arches when she hit pavement. Icy bite stealing heat. Atlas leapt beside her, unbothered, scanning currents like a lifeguard. Neighbors converged, silhouettes carrying pets in laundry baskets. Toddlers wrapped in garbage bag ponchos. A street lamp's dying glow revealed Vince's trusty school bus idling mid-intersection. Hazards pulsing amber across the deluge. He had ignored district protocol, stay put, and fired the engine the moment he heard radio chatter about the levee. Now he steered a rolling arc. Door flung open, wipers slashing water to ribbons. Olivia shepherded the twins up the steps. Atlas hesitated, nose lifted, nostrils flaring at scents braided in the downpour. Gasoline, alder bark, distant ozone, panic. Then he twisted south, away from bus and crowd. Olivia called his name, voice splitting. He glanced back, eyes a molten gold question. Then bolted down Hickory Lane toward the river bend. Vince braked, lean torso craning out. He sensed someone's trapped. He shouted through rain ricochets. Olivia's breath fractured. She told Lily to stay on the bus, then plunged after the shrinking canine silhouette. Water escalated to calf depth, dragging at pant legs like insistent hands. Atlas cut behind the old Gardner residence where chain-link fences created a funnel. Olivia followed, fingers grazing fence tops for balance. Lightning raked clouds. In that stark illumination she glimpsed the situation. A sedan half-submerged. Nose in a drainage ditch. Its roof mashed against a downed oak. Inside, an elderly man struggled with a seatbelt jammed under steering column debris. Water lapped mid-window. On the rear bench, a cocker spaniel yipped, frantic tail beating fogged glass. Atlas stood braced on the driver's side door. Fur sleeting water, barking a rhythmic pattern. Here, hurry. Olivia waded to the passenger door. Tried the handle. Locked. She slammed an elbow into tempered glass that refused to spiderweb. Atlas's bark sharpened, as if scolding physics itself. Olivia groped underwater for a rock. Swung again. Glass webbed. She struck twice more. The pane collapsed inward. Frigid river water flooded faster. Olivia plunged her arms through broken edges. Fingers numb, and popped the lock. Atlas leapt onto the trunk. Claws skidding. Weight depressing metal enough to alter angle. Water sloshed out the shattered passenger window. Slowing the fill, Olivia unlatched the spaniel's crate first. Tossing bale of fur to Atlas's waiting jaws, he caught the dog by scruff with surgical care. Hopped backward to shore where he set it shivering under a laurel thicket. He returned, bounded atop the hood, nose pressed to windshield like Morse code encouragement. Olivia reached for the elderly driver. Seatbelt still wedged. She dipped beneath waterline, lungs aflame, found the release button clogged with twigs. 1, 2 heaves, it budged. She surfaced, gulped rain and air, then dragged the man across shifting seats toward the window. Here the water seized him. Weight tripled by soaked wool coat. Atlas crouched on the sill, teeth sinking into the coat collar. Anchor against the torrent. Olivia shoved. Atlas pulled. The man sluiced through, body folding awkwardly. They half carried, half floated him to the crown of the road where Vince and 2 residents formed a chain. Hands locked, feet skidding. Together, they hustled the man onto a scrap of lawn elevated above current, where paramedics arriving by Zodiac raft swarmed. Olivia turned. Atlas was missing. Panic sliced a clean line through her chest. She spun toward the car again, only rain and black water. She called his name. The spaniel barked. High-pitched echo. Another lightning flare carved the sky, and there, 50 yards downstream, Atlas paddled against a refrigerator-sized log bobbing toward a culvert. A girl clung atop the log. Maybe 9, eyes wide discs of terror. Olivia sprinted along the flooded shoulder, yelling to Vince, who swung the bus around, headlight beams jittering across water. Atlas reached the log, teeth finding bark for purchase. He tried nudging it toward calmer eddies, but the current's hunger was stronger. Log and riders pinwheeled. Atlas shifted tactics. He lunged, seized the girl's raincoat hood, careful not to pierce fabric or skin. He pulled, straining neck tendons, hind legs churning. Each stroke nudged the pair inches sideways. 20 yards. 10. At last, a parked pickup's tailgate, half underwater, offered a platform. Atlas shoved the child upward with his head until small hands caught rusted metal. Vince reached from the pickup bed, hauling the girl over. Atlas, muscles quivering, tried to clamber next, but a riptide inside the street's churning morphed, tugging him beneath. Water swallowed his hindquarters. His claws raked metal. Failed. Olivia's scream ripped wind. She charged waist deep, but the current yanked ankles, buckling her to knees. Vince leapt from the truck, waist chain tethering him to a mailbox post. He snagged Atlas's collar, braced, hauled with everything a lifetime hurling gearshifts had toughened. Atlas emerged, fur slicked to ribs, coughing water, paws scrabbling for traction. Vince heaved. The dog tumbled into truck bed beside the girl, chest heaving, eyes glassy with exhaustion yet alert enough to nudge the rescued child's shoulder as though counting survivors. Paramedics whisked them to the gymnasium shelter, now buzzing like a hive. Inside, cots aligned in solemn rows. Olivia shivered under thermal blankets, Atlas's head in her lap. A vet volunteer listened to his lungs, nodding satisfaction. The elderly driver regained consciousness, clasped Olivia's hand, thanking her in a whisper lined with decades of unspent tears. The spaniel curled against Atlas, trembling less now, tail tapping timid trust. When dawn finally pried clouds apart, Maple Creek stood sodden but intact, 0 fatalities. Minor injuries. The river receded grudgingly, like a beast acknowledging stalemate. News crews arrived within hours, hungry for footage of a dog rescuing multiple victims in a single night. Olivia allowed one interview, voice raw, highlighting first responders and Vince's improvised bus arc. She said little of Atlas except that he once again saw a gap and filled it. And maybe gaps will always exist, but at least love can flood in faster than water. A week later, City Council convened in the high school auditorium, its stage draped with blue tarps still wet-scented. They presented Atlas with an engraved silver tag inscribed second to none. The whole town clapped until palms stung. Atlas took applause like wind takes tall grass. He bent, never bowed. Across state lines, petitions circulated urging federal grants for canine search and rescue programs in flood-prone communities. At least 6 governors cited Atlas during press briefings. Journalists dubbed him Floodbreaker. Olivia preferred the nickname an anonymous child chalked on a driveway. Bravery in a blanket of fur. Life settled into post-storm rhythms. Contractors patched levee scars. Volunteers replanted riverbank willows. Children returned to classrooms still smelling faintly of disinfectant and wet textbooks. Atlas, with mild antibiotic regimens and rest, regained full stamina within weeks. Yet Olivia noticed subtle shifts. He slept deeper, rose slower, eyes clouding with cataract lace at edges. The vet predicted another good 5 years. Olivia nodded, filed prediction into Hope's drawer. Summer arrived on Jasmine breezes. The twins, now high school seniors, filmed a documentary sequel for a civics project, Atlas. Community Catalyst. They interviewed sandbox toddlers who wore paw print band-aids, retired couples whose nightly walks intersected Atlas's patrols, even the Cocker Spaniel's family now volunteering at the animal shelter. They ended with a drone shot, Atlas reclining atop a hill overlooking the town. Sunset wicking amber across his coat. Over voiceover, Lily mused that heroism can become architecture, something future generations inhabit without noticing. The beams overhead were once singular acts of spine and heart. The film won a state competition, then national. At the Washington, D.C. ceremony, the twins accepted plaques under chandeliers older than the Republic. Olivia, seated beside them, pressed a hand to an empty seat saved in spirit for Atlas. Airline restrictions on senior dogs forced him to stay home. Streaming the event on a couch pillow fortress with Vince's dog sitting. But the next chapter belonged to quieter days. Atlas's rear leg, the one scarred from tumor surgery, developed arthritis. Walks shortened. He spent afternoons on Olivia's porch, watching bees thread lavender spires, tail flicking meter to their buzzing. Neighborhood kids drifted by, stroking his head before soccer practice. Parents waved from minivans. Everyone seemed to know time was finite in ways they'd refused to admit earlier. Early one October morning, dawn pinked the sky in hazy sherbet streaks. Olivia woke to find Atlas no longer at the foot of her bed. She searched the house, then stepped into the yard. There he lay on the dewy grass, front paws crossed, muzzle lifted to the horizon where sun would soon climb. His breathing was shallow, steady, peaceful. Olivia sat beside him, draped a fleece blanket across his haunches. She whispered that the world was safer because he'd shared it, that she would keep moving into gaps. Promise. As sunlight spilled gold over rooftops, Atlas exhaled once, a sigh like wind through cedar. And stilled. They buried him on Carson Hill, the rise overlooking the river where levee repairs gleamed white against silt. Town ordinance normally prohibited animal burials on public land, but the council voted unanimous exception. Citing moral imperative, a stone marker joined the plaque's lineage, Atlas Carson, faithful guardian, 2017 to 2034. Underneath, Evan etched words from their children's book sequel, When the Brakes Failed. You taught us to push back. Memorial Week unfolded in layers, candlelit vigils, essay contests, a ribbon run tracing his dawn route. Vince parked bus 17 at the hilltop, left headlights glowing dusk to dawn. Mrs. Langley emerged from retirement, donned the crystal sash, shepherded mourners across the crosswalk where bravery once hit the brakes. Grief can bruise, but it can also graft. Donations to the Assembly Fund surged. Within months, a regional headquarters rose beside the new levee, housing training grounds for therapy pups, a diagnostic lab, and a glass-walled atrium named Atlas Commons where children read to shelter dogs learning trust. A bronze statue of Atlas, chest broad, eyes forward, stood flanked by benches carved with the names of every animal adopted through the program's grants. Years turned again. Lily became a wildlife veterinarian. Evan an urban planning engineer specializing in resilient infrastructure. They claimed their paths were inevitable. One tended life's fragile spark, the other designed to prevent fractures. Both carried Atlas in pocket-sized lockets containing a tuft of his gray fur. Olivia continued her playground design firm, weaving small tributes into each project. A paw print stepping stone here, a mural of a bus braked mid-slide there. In evening talks at community centers, she spoke of moments as fulcrums and choices as levers, and how sometimes the universe needs only the weight of a single heartbeat to tilt history toward hope. Vince retired the same year the first dog graduated from Atlas Commons. At the ceremony he fit a miniature medallion around the pup's collar. Eyes wet, he called the pup shift after the gear that changed everything. In quiet hours, Olivia would hike to Carson Hill, sit beneath the cedar sapling planted over Atlas's grave. Its trunk thickened yearly, rings stacking stories wide. She traced the stone letters, listening to wind play the branches like chimes. Sometimes children visited, pressing new crayon drawings between roots, pictures of buses and capes and sunsets holding space for the impossible. One winter twilight, snowflakes drifted for the first time in 20 years. Rare in Maple Creek, Olivia watched them swirl under street lamps, each flake of fleeting geometry. She smiled, sensing Atlas somewhere in the hush, padding eternal patrols along cosmic levees, breaking runaway comets, nudging frightened galaxies back into orbit. The thought warmed her more than any hearth. Back home, she opened the back door. A rescued shepherd mix, adopted weeks earlier from Atlas Commons, bounded forward, tail wagging figure eights. Olivia knelt, let the dog lick snow from her gloves. She whispered a greeting, New chapter outlined in Wag and Woof. Legacy breathing onward in sinew and spirit. Outside, Maple Creek slept securely. Bravery had not left, it had multiplied. Seated by paw prints pressed into the town's beating heart. And so the story of Atlas Carson remained unfinished. Penned anew each dawn by anyone who decided to lean against fate's momentum and hold until danger slowed. By anyone who believed gaps in the world exist so love can leap into them. Somewhere, a bus engine rumbled alive. Gears checking beneath conscientious hands. Children's laughter already echoing through its aisle. And though the driver saw only asphalt ahead, the road itself remembered the morning when a dog proved a single soul could stop catastrophe mid-roll and set it gently down.